At first, I saw the levels of hell, beginning from the very deepest, rising gradually toward something far brighter. I can't recall every detail, nor the nature of each level, but the deepest one stayed with me. Everything was draped in shadow. The ground was dark and dry, scattered with decaying, ancient buildings that loomed like hollow shells. Above, the sky churned with ominous red clouds against an endless black, the kind of red that looked almost stained into the air. The people there, if they were still people at all, had lost all sense of self. They no longer hesitated. Mindless. Consumed by something primal. You either defended yourself, or were lost to that place forever. One level above wasn't much better, though it carried a different weight. The details are fuzzy, but I remember a broken-down village, a rough settlement where twisted, tribal figures lived, their world ruled by fear and fire. Higher still, nearer to hell's surface, I wandered through long, empty deserts. They stretched for what felt like miles, silent, scorched, barren. Then came the shift. I rose through thick white clouds. At first, they seemed artificial, painted on, almost. But as I climbed, they became fuller, softer, more real. Until, finally, I emerged into heaven. What happened next? I'm not entirely sure if it was still heaven, or another dream altogether. I found myself in a quiet, almost forgotten place. There was a box filled with chewing gum, no one seemed to care about it, but I took one anyway. It was fruity, tutti frutti, I think. While others nearby were busy with some event, or gathering, I turned away, and wandered into a forest. It was absolutely stunning. Not dense, just open enough to breathe in the beauty of it. Every leaf, every flower, every patch of green was vivid, vibrant, healthy. Golden sunlight filtered through the trees, soft and warm, casting a quiet glow across the forest floor. And then, amongst the bushes, I saw a deer, graceful, calm. It looked at me for a moment before turning away into the foliage. Oddly, in the distance, I could hear people talking, not shouting, just discussing something related to world politics. It sounded like angels concerned about the current state of the earth. But I didn't stay to listen. I simply kept walking, the sound of voices fading behind me as I followed the deer deeper into the forest. I think I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. This dream terrified me during and after waking from it, because of how disturbing it was. I'm in this massive circular dome-like structure, made of steel that's as large as 3 football fields across and lengthwise. The air feels stale and suffocating, repelling my lungs. There's barely any light, casting cold hard shadows on the metal. Looking around, I see these towering steel walls are actually gates, each with its own intricate symbols and patterns scrambled. We must put these symbols together in a pattern we've never seen in order to open the gates and escape. My view is on 2 people, a man and a woman, using an electronic device pointed at the gate far away in front of us. Up towards the top of this gate are several moving hexagonal plates. Within those moving plates are smaller sections, all differing in color and size. The 3 of us must put those hexagonal plates together, shifting and turning using this handheld electronic device. Some of these patterns start turning on the northern gate, shifting and forming a small yet whole piece of this impossible alien-like puzzle. I choke a breath as the stale stuffy air freezes in apprehension as the gate's gears begin to whir slowly, pulling the blood from my face in terror, as the cold heavy steel lifts up to reveal the beginning of our nightmare. Slowly, the gate slides upwards. Almost soundless, as this dome's foreign technology is nothing like we've seen. Swirling dust illuminates the entryway, coating the looming, massive creature now standing in its place. All that's visible are 2 monstrous drapes of velvet pulled taut against a network of wiry veins. Backlit against the glowing orange light emanating behind the gate, these wings look bat-like, yet cosmic with the ability to pierce and petrify. Unable to move, I stare at this being in terror, as it starts to shift the top of its body and begins to lower its awful fleshy velvet wings. Almost in slow motion it bends low to the ground and begins lurching towards us, as tall as the dome's curved ceiling and just as vast. Paralyzed, I notice this thing's movements resemble a sea creature's, maybe a squid. Its flesh is draped in such a way that it doesn't have bones, but instead are large spikes growing through various orifices. Not having appendages, but a fluid body of flesh and the programming to instill fear and destruction. Sweeping its way closer to us at an impossible speed, it looms and hovers over our heads. The entire body blocking out any light, and all view of the gates around us. Blocking all possibility of escape. My two companions next to me grip each other, encapsulated in shock, too late to reject their fates. The creature lowers down, its sharp beak revealing itself through the flesh that is now tearing into the chests of my companions. The grisly sounds of bones churning breaking the silence and echoing throughout the dome. Snapping their spines and slowly devouring their bodies, but leaving just their heads alone and still conscious. Still conscious, for we still need to decipher the puzzles on the gates. Trapped in this dome, dozens of our lives repeated here as we regenerated and ultimately died over and over again. Our deaths repeating while the creature tortures us. Feeding off of us. Still unable to open one more gate, as we are kept just barely alive. Dismembering us, dying over and over yet waking up again, and again in the same space in the same time. Hope dwindling and forever unable to escape, as if our tormentor enjoys its work. I now learn that I was never supposed to see this creature. This demented being sent to cause our destruction. This place is death. This place is hell and there is no other name for it. I had a dream where I was watching my dad and aunt as they walked through a small town called Valley Springs, the town they grew up in. My dad looked to be about 14 years old, and my aunt was younger, maybe around 10. I was viewing them from just above their heads, listening to their conversation. They were talking about some clothes my dad had bought from the second-hand store. He didn't want their mother to know about the clothes, so they were planning to leave them at their older brother's house before going home. I saw them inside his house, placing what looked like 2 shirts on the couch. My dad reminded my aunt not to tell their mom. I could also see my 2 uncles there, talking, though I couldn't make out what they were saying. Then Uncle Jim turned to my dad and aunt and said, "What are you 2 doing? You'd better go home." That was the dream. I remember it very clearly. It's unusual for me to dream from an above perspective, just observing without interacting. I'm calling this dream a memory from my dad's life. When I dreamed it, I felt completely convinced that it was a real memory of his. When I was a child, I was haunted by a recurring nightmare. It always began the same way. I found myself standing in an impossibly vast, pitch-black space. Not quite a room, no, more like a colossal, endless hallway. There were no visible walls, no ceiling above, and certainly no floor below. Just a gaping void, stretching into nothingness in every direction. On either side of me stood 2 enormous stone ledges, like the broken edges of an ancient bridge. I was always on one of them, staring across at the other, knowing I had to get there, but never quite understanding why. Suspended between the 2 ledges were chains. Long, thick chains of every imaginable size, some as wide as tree trunks, others no thicker than rope. They crisscrossed the abyss like the remains of some shattered suspension bridge. And I wasn't alone. There were others, other people. We were all trying to cross. Clinging to the chains, crawling across them like frightened insects ourselves. But the worst part was what else was on those chains. Giant cockroaches. Massive, glistening creatures, grotesque in every way, skittering across the chains with unnerving speed and purpose. They weren't just there. They were waiting. Watching. Trying to stop us from reaching the other side. Dreams about weird things happening in the sky fascinate me and usually stick with me. The image is my view facing south while looking straight up. Left side is east and right side is west. The dream was the following. It was about 8:30 p.m. I was in my kitchen looking for a snack. I then went out on my back porch on this calm clear night, with the waxing gibbous moon overhead. Looking to the southeast, I saw some weird ripple in the sky. The ripple then turned into a dark blue vertical tear in the sky. Then out of this tear came this big ball of light, with a small tail like a comet. With it was a smaller ball of light, that seemed to be tied to it by gravity, or something. Both objects moved above and past me heading northwest, but ended up stopping behind the moon. To get a better view, I went through my house to my front yard to see it. While going through my house, I overheard the TV saying something about torn spacetime. That these two objects were very distant. The light these objects gave off was not blinding. It was still calm. I went back inside and heard the TV say something about a black hole in the solar system. I went back out to see that they stayed with the moon as it set as the night went on. The two light balls turned a slight shade of pink. The dream ended when I started to notice stars in the sky disappearing. Many times in my life, I've had infinity dreams. Something in the design of the dream leads from one point to the next, forming a repetitive pattern that lasts the entire dream. Then, when I wake up, I kind of feel like I haven't worked through any dream progress, and I feel extremely exhausted, like I've wasted my whole night. One time, I was in a room full of sugar. As I tried to shovel through the sugar to get to the next room, a flood of Kool-Aid red water would rush in and flood the room, and I'd have to fight through it to reach the next dry sugar room, only to do it all over again. I'd wake up in the morning with the feeling that I'd wasted my entire night's sleep. I have a recurring dream. It always begins the same way. I approach this old, creepy-looking house with my best friend. We walk up to it, and I unlock the door. Oddly enough, the inside looks like a perfectly normal home. So, we step in. But just as we're entering, I blink, and everything changes. Suddenly, we're no longer in a house. We're in what feels like an endless, pure white space, flooded with blinding light. A labyrinth of staircases stretches out in every direction, defying all logic and physics. It's then that I realize I'm dreaming, again. I become lucid. The strange part is, even though I'm aware, I still can't leave. Every time I find myself in this dream, I try to test things. And I've discovered 3 major rules so far. You can't exit the dream unless you die. There's no fall damage, no matter how far you drop. There's a creature in here, some kind of monstrous, wolf-like being, and it's the only thing that can actually take me out of the dream. Oh, and there's no hunger or thirst in this place, but I do still need to sleep. One of the most fascinating parts of this dream is how the perspective sometimes shifts. Most of the time, I see through my own eyes. But now and then, it changes, like I'm being watched through security cameras, either from somewhere high above, or from the eyes of the creature itself. Late one night, under a moonless sky, I ascended to the rooftop. The darkness enveloped me, offering a serene solitude. I climbed the metal staircase to the topmost level, savoring the cool breeze and the faint city lights flickering in the distance. The rooftop was my sanctuary, a place to escape and think. As I stood there, absorbed in the stillness, an eerie sound broke through the night. Voices, disconsolate and unsettling, drifted up from below. They were accompanied by gasping and creaking noises, sending shivers down my spine. Shadows shifted in the faint light, creating an almost supernatural atmosphere. Curiosity gnawed at me, but an inexplicable pressure held me back. Something deep inside warned me against investigating. The fear was paralyzing, but the mystery beckoned. Minutes felt like hours as I grappled with my fear. Suddenly, a chilling realization hit me: whatever was making those noises wasn't after me. It was going for my family downstairs. Panic surged through me, pushing aside my hesitation. I sprang to my feet and hurried down an alternative metal staircase that led directly to the balcony of my flat. Entering the house, I found my family sleeping peacefully, their faces serene. Relief washed over me, but it was only short-lived. As I turned towards my room, a sight stopped me in my tracks. There, on my bed, was another me. He was lying down, engrossed in a book. The book's cover was familiar. It detailed the very events I had just experienced. For a brief few moments, I stared at the unholy abomination in silence, the surreal encounter making my heart pound. Then, my alternate self looked up and met my gaze. Slowly, he closed the book, and at that precise moment, the dream shattered. I woke up abruptly, my heart pounding. On my chest lay the very book from the dream. It was as if I had fallen asleep while reading it. Bewildered and shaken, I sat up, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. The line between reality and dream blurred, leaving me questioning the nature of my experience.